Are you starting? Hello, friend. In today's video on Plaid Lattes, we will be making fridge cake 2 different ways. A chocolate and a white. If that's something you want to see, then do not adjust your screen. Alright, so what is fridge cake, you ask? Fridge cake is cake that lasts in the fridge for like 3 weeks. You can do different flavors, whatever. I'm going to show you a baked one and then a microwave one. And one of the purposes of this is the baked one, which is the vanilla, freezes really well. So not only can you keep it in the fridge, but you can make it when you have time and pop it in the freezer. So if someone says, hey, can I come over for coffee? You're not, oh, I gotta throw something together. You have it in the freezer. But if you don't want that, you can make the one in the microwave just as easy. Or you're having a dinner party you didn't know you were having. Someone was supposed to bring the dessert and they forgot. It's easy to throw together. I will link the original recipes down below and then of course write in my modifications. First you're going to cream, and I am halving the first one. The first one is supposed to be a proper cake. I just make a half batch of it, which is great.
Because we don't need a whole.
No, you don't need a whole cake. This one kind of comes out with the gluten-free flour as like a pound cake and an angel food cake had a baby. Yeah. So you're going to cream your butter. Break it up. Now, the half batch should technically be 3 tablespoons, but because it's gluten-free, it is 4 tablespoons. I also just put in a cup of sugar.
So that instead of 3 tablespoons of butter, 4 tablespoons of butter.
Yeah.
Okay.
And it won't quite cream, which is why you have a 1/3 cup of oil. I do what I call a heavy pour. So you do just over the 1/3 cup. You're not doing quite of a half cup.
And that's in a liquid measuring cup,
Yeah.
not a dry measuring cup, which is a totally different measurement. And I think a lot of people don't get that a dry measuring cup and a liquid measuring cup are not the same.
Yeah. And I also have it says use a tablespoon of vanilla extract. I don't use a tablespoon of vanilla extract. I don't think in anything.
Mm-hmm.
I have 1/2 teaspoon of almond extract because this will also have raspberry jam and it goes really well together. Once that's mixed together, you're gonna scrape down. If you're wondering why there's some white stuff on here, the actual recipe says to mix everything and then beat your egg whites. But depending on what bowls you have, it makes more sense to me to beat your egg whites and then just put them in a regular bowl off to the side, and that way you don't have to wash your beaters in between. Because
that makes sense, because then you don't want, doesn't matter if there's egg white on your beaters, but you don't want any oils on your beaters when you're whipping egg white.
Eggs, exactly. I'm going to put in my flour.
You're smart.
Sometimes I walk into walls. Not through them, into
upstairs.
them. Yes. Nothing will make you realize how smart or not smart you are than tripping up the stairs or tripping over nothing. And you're like, what did I trip on?
My feet.
Yep. And then I did pre-pour my milk into here. It does say room temperature milk. I don't find it makes a difference. It was just not
Your milk
the right.
Doesn't care if it's room temperature.
No. And that's 1/2 cup of milk. And we use lactose-free milk just because we use lactose-free. Mix it all up. And sorry, in with my gluten-free flour, which was the PC brand gluten-free flour, was my 1/2 tablespoon of baking powder and 1/2 teaspoon of salt. I use salted butter and I also add salt. People say not to. I don't know. I find it just makes everything turn out
I
better.
don't find that our butter is that salty.
Yeah, I think in the States, if you get salted butter, they like add extra salt to it.
I don't know, yeah, but they always say like, don't use salted butter, but first of all, it never makes sense to me to charge an extra $2 for a thing of butter that
I think because it
has
takes,
no salt in it.
It takes more time to make the butter with no salt.
I don't
Because
think,
when you make butter by hand, you put salt in it.
I don't know, it doesn't make sense to me.
As far as I remember from making butter at Heritage Days when I was in elementary school, pretty sure I put. I could be wrong. And then you're gonna mix in your 3 egg whites. That will leave you with 3 egg yolks, which you can make really good cookies with. You know, if it tastes more like bakery cookies, and they'll freeze really well. Or you can use if you're making, what's the other
Creme
one?
brulee.
Yeah, creme brulee. There we
Yeah.
go. I'm like, there's something else we make all the time with egg yolks. And then I'm like, what do I do with the egg whites? And you're just going to fold it. It's not going to fold quite as well because of how gluten-free flour is opposed to regular flour. But as long as it's thoroughly combined, yeah. And then don't make the mistake I made the first time I ever half batch something. Don't half your time. Because then you're going to be like, why is this still liquid? You still need the same amount of time. Well, a couple minutes less because it's gluten-free, but it's not half the time.
That much.
Yeah. You make your first half batch of cookies and you're like, what do you mean they aren't done in 5 minutes? It's a half a batch, not half a time. But
Life lessons.
exactly. And then I line and I'm using a square 8x8. I line it with nonstick tin foil.
If you don't do tin foil, then do parchment paper.
And butter it. Don't oil it. Same with the next one I'll make. Make sure that's all properly mixed. And then we're gonna pour it in.
Scrape.
Yes. And we'll scrape the bowl. The cleaner your bowl is when it's done, the more you got out.
And the less you're washing down the drain.
Yeah.
Like, food wastage is a real thing. When you cook in an actual restaurant kitchen, you learn not to waste anything. Like, every speck of food is money, so.
Exactly. And then just make sure it's in all the corners. You can do it in a round, but I find the square better, especially when you're cutting up to serve. It looks fancier. And yeah. Alright. And then it goes in for, I believe, 30 minutes. I will double check and of course put the time down below. So, our microwave chocolate cake, you're going to butter, don't oil. I made that mistake. It does not cook the same way. Butter your dishes. So, the original recipe, which once again, we'll link that one down below as well, says do it in 3 big mugs. And I did that before and it was fine, except then you have like triple layer mini cake. It does not stand up well. So if you have, a lot of people have these, or you can get them at the dollar store or the thrift store, the oval, like the bigger oval ramekins, or if you have a square ramekin that's a small one, that will work too. And butter those. So instead of a 3-layer, you have a 2-layer cake. It also fits perfectly in one of these containers, which I'll show you later. So, in my aesthetic wood mixing bowl, because you don't need a mixer for this, I have 7 tablespoons of flour, 3 tablespoons of cocoa. It calls for half a thing of sugar, but I decided to write it all down in tablespoons, or 1/4 cup of sugar. It has you write it all down in tablespoons. I will do it, or it has it cups. I will write it all down in tablespoons. Those are the words I'm looking for. Actually, wait, sorry, pause for just a second. Why do I feel like my hand? It is a half cup of sugar, not a quarter cup. I just halved the last recipe, so in my mind it was like, oh, I have to half it. So it's a half cup of sugar, or 8 tablespoons, 7 tablespoons of flour, 3 tablespoons of cocoa, and then baking powder, quarter teaspoon baking powder, baking soda, and salt. And I'm skipping the vanilla. I don't know why. I don't find vanilla adds as much as a lot of people say it does. In certain places, but when you're making like a chocolate cake.
Chocolate cake, it always makes more sense to me to add pinch coffee than vanilla.
Exactly.
But that's me.
So then you just mix it up. You have your liquid. So I have a mixed up egg, 4 tablespoons of milk, 3 tablespoons of canola oil, and 2 tablespoons of water. And you're going to just pour that in. Quick and easy. Scrape out your bowl so you actually get all of your liquid. Yep. Sometimes if you mix a cake or something and you're like, why is it so dry? Go back to your measuring stuff, and sometimes you're like, oh hey, it's dry because there's a whole bunch of stuff left behind. And then I'm just using a little spatula. So really, this is great if you forgot a dessert, you can make it and cook it in the microwave, and you can pop it in the fridge if you need it to cool faster, or just let it cool while you're doing other stuff. Make the icing, let the icing sit, and then ice it when it's cool and you're ready. You don't have to ice a cake hours in advance. It's nice if you can chill it, but if you're in a rush, then you're in a rush. All right, all well mixed, and then I'm just gonna divide it in between my 2 dishes. All right, last time I made this in a measuring cup because that made it easier. So if you have an oversized measuring cup, that's also an option because it just makes pouring it easier. As even as possible. I mean, really, it's a chocolate cake. It's a microwave chocolate cake. If your layers aren't perfect,
somebody's measuring those layers.
I want to know.
They don't deserve that chocolate cake.
Exactly. I want to know who's measuring your layers. As long as it fills both bowls, you're fine. Here in our ratchet kitchen.
Hey, we make some amazing meals in this ratchet kitchen.
In our piddly kitchen with our tiny rollaway cart. Teeny tiny itty bitty jazz hands. Alright, these are even, and then I'm going to pop them in the microwave. Start with a minute and then do an extra 30 seconds. You will probably need that extra 30 seconds, but depending on your microwave, don't do a minute 30 or you will burn it. And you're just gonna let them cool, and we'll be back when we're ready for the cakes.
Do you do them separately?
Yes, separately.
One at a time?
One at a time, minute, then 30 seconds, then do your next one, minute, 30 seconds.
Awesome.
And then don't let them sit in here for too long. You want to just let them sit for a minute or 2 and then pop them onto a cooling rack. So after the vanilla cake was cool, I melted some raspberry jam and mixed it with lemon and put it on top. I did poke holes. It doesn't sink in all the way, but then once you put it back in the fridge, it does firm up and you have a nice raspberry layer. Now I'm going to cut it in half and ice it, and then next you see, we will wrap up the video. All right, so we have our 2 cakes. I put a little too much raspberry jam, so it's bleeding a little bit, but it'll set up more. So this one, the vanilla one, is perfect for making ahead and freezing, making ahead for company. If you're having a bigger party, you can ice both sides, cut down the middle, and then you have little cakes for everybody. As it is, we do a half, and then you just cut slices. It works, it's nice, it's tasty, it's not too sweet, and the buttercream is just a simple vanilla buttercream frosting. I'll write a recipe down below.
And no one will believe it's gluten-free.
Yeah, it doesn't taste, it's not dry, it will keep undrying for 3 weeks, approximately, in the fridge, as long as it's an E-sealed container.
Or you can freeze that bad boy up.
Or yeah, cut it in half, freeze half of it, and then have the other half for snacking. My chocolate cake, I realized I'd actually made a note of it before. Because of the size of the pans I use, you actually want to cook it for 2 minutes. A minute, 30 seconds, 30 seconds. I didn't, so it kind of fell apart. That's why it's not on a pretty plate. But it lives in a container anyway. It's great if you want to have it with ice cream, you just cut a piece off. But if you just want a little something sweet, like I said, keeps in the fridge. So when you're done dinner, whatever, and you're like, well, I don't want a cookie, I don't want this, grab a fork and you have a fork of cake. It's been very helpful for me in trying to be healthier and fitter. If I want something, I just have a fork of cake. It's very fork and great. They're simple, they're easy. Normally I would not make 2 at one time, but I wanted to for the video, so this one will probably get frozen. And yeah, till next time, stay caffeinated, stay cozy.
And have a piece of cake.
And have a piece of cake.